Check. Okay, guys. Thank you guys for coming out. I'm Jackson Daly. I'm part of the East Texas War Memory Project here on campus. We collect and preserve oral histories, and that right now we're focusing in between World War II to Vietnam. And these are war stories. They're not just of veterans. We want to try to capture any family members and their experiences as well. I want to talk a little bit about our speaker today. It's Mr. James Scott. He is a U.S. Army and Air Force veteran. He served during the Vietnam War, and he is an alumnus of this university. So we'd like to welcome him back and for this speech. And he also earned the Distinguished Flying Cross and a Bronze Star during his service. So with that, I give you Mr. James Scott.
I'll use this, but usually I don't have to have one, so I'm going to turn it off. And if you can hear me in the back, because I can't stand and deliver. I don't do that very well. So let me, I'll turn this off, and if you can hear me, it'll be a whole lot easier for me. And if not, well, then I'll use it and we'll go from there. Can you hear me back there now?
Yeah.
I did a presentation one time in school, and the only write-up I got was I was too loud. So let me, maybe I can use that for this little deal. First of all, I'll put this back up here. I want to tell you that you're supposed to, when you make presentations, and I've done this before, not in this type of situation where I'm actually talking about something about me, but I've addressed a lot of different people. And I've always been told that one of the things you need to do, and what I practiced was I always wrote it all out, and then I stood up in front of the mirror and I would talk to myself and write and said, well, that didn't sound right. Well, for today, I didn't do that. I was changing this thing up until this morning. So what you hear is, this is for the first time. I hadn't heard it myself either. So we'll experience this together. I want to thank some people first. Let me get my glasses on. Seems like I don't need them, but I just wear them for effect. I want to thank Jackson, first of all, for inviting me. He's my contact here, and I appreciate your work, and I'm going to assign you a job of being my timekeeper. Like I said, I don't know how long this is going to go. We may be here 10 minutes. We may be here, I may still be talking. I understand some of you have a class at 12:45 or something. If you need to get up and leave, please do. It won't be the first time somebody's walked out on me when I talk, okay? So if you got to go, get up and leave. And if you leave and I'm still talking, what's left, we'll make it a round table discussion if they want to do that. I do have, and I want to thank Dr. Gruber for his support and first asking me to be a part of this. I met him in Washington at the Smithsonian Institute. I was walking with my son and my son-in-law out of the Vietnam exhibit in the Smithsonian, and my son saw the back of a t-shirt at East Texas State, oh no, Texas A&M Commerce, that's what he had. And he said, Dad, there's somebody up there that's from Commerce. So I went up and it was Dr. Gruber. And were you there or just Haley? It was Haley was there. And we got to talking, and I found out what he was doing in his work here at the school, and he's the one who asked me then if I would come and interview, and I certainly am appreciative of his work and the work of all the young men and women in this program. History has always been part of something I did. I was a history teacher. I've been a principal and a superintendent of schools, and I'm still a student of history. I still enjoy reading and talking about it. And I watch, my wife is gone, I watch the military channel, and it's either that or Lifetime, so I go to the military. And I certainly am appreciative of all the work that Dr. Gruber and the others have done here for this program. Two other people I want to mention, I was asked to interview. Courtney was one of my interviewers, and so was Haley. Both those young ladies super. They were excellent. They put me at ease and did a super job. And if you'd like to look, my interviews are available for you to look at. After today, you'll probably go, nah, I don't think so. It is an honor for me to be here today. I understand this is the university's Veterans Vigil. Started yesterday, did it not? Ends up today. And I understand also that it is dedicated to wounded warriors, to injured soldiers. What a wonderful, wonderful thing. To me, to honor those people who have given so much. I was very fortunate. I spent over 12 months in Vietnam, and I never got a scratch. Well, I did. I ran into a sticker bush during one night's mortar attack, and ran into a sticker bush and carried a wound for the rest of my tour. They didn't give me a Purple Heart for it, but it sure hurt when I got it hurt. But the wounded warriors, whether they are from our current conflicts, my time, Korea, World War I, World War II, there are still veterans available, are still veterans alive today from World War II. Your support of them and the public support of them is so important. So for the Veterans Vigil, I certainly applaud that group who put that in place. It is unusual for me to make this type of presentation. As I told you, I was a principal, and I've spoken in front of legislators. I've worked with school boards. I've done a lot of presentations, but never one essentially about what I did. And it's very hard for me to do that, especially in this type of forum. Talking with Courtney and Haley they put me at ease, and that was very easy for me, even though I was being filmed all the time. So I had to kind of watch what I said, but still, it was easy. Talking about me is not easy. I haven't done that to that extent. The most I ever said anything about what I've done or what I experienced or my friends was nearly 4 hours of interview that I gave those young ladies there. Nobody's ever actually asked me and then listened to what I had to say about me. So today, I kind of want to make this about my experience, but it's also the experience of a bunch of other people. I'm a small town kid, born and raised in Wolf City, Texas. Worked my way through East Texas State and was threatened with the draft, so I joined to be a helicopter pilot instead of being drafted. There's thousands of kids just like me. The fact of the matter is, when I went in the Army at 21, I was probably an old man. When I got to Vietnam at 22, a lot of my buddies, people who were served with me in the country, went to flight school, served a full tour in Vietnam, and when they got back, they still weren't old enough to buy beer. So I am one story representative of thousands of young men. Over 4,000 of my fellow crewmen, 4,000 of them were killed in Vietnam. And we're talking about air crew. Of course, you know that over 58,000 soldiers, men and women, were killed in Vietnam. Over 4,000 were air crew. I was very fortunate this past April to be able to go to Washington and go to the monument. And my son and my son-in-law, that's where I met Dr. Gruber, took me to Washington to go to the Vietnam Memorial. And I again was able to see the names of my classmates, my fellow company members, the guys that I knew on the wall. So it is with this in mind, and I'll talk to you today. I want you, it's not, I don't want to seem like I'm bragging. I'm telling stories I've been asked to do. And mine is just one of many, as there are many, many young men who did what, and more, did what I did, and certainly a whole lot more. Again, I'm looking on my notes because I wrote part of it this morning. As I said, I got out of college. I actually graduated around the 24th of August, 1968. I'm telling my age. I graduated early. I'll let you believe that or not. And I got married the 31st of August. This is my wife right over here, and she's been with me through the good and the bad, mostly. We call. I'll tell you that story later, but anyhow, we were married the 31st of August. When I got out of, when I graduated, I went around trying to find a job. Well, I was 2S. That's the draft status. We had the draft in '68, and I was 2S. When I got out of college, I went around trying to find a job. And everybody said, "Oh yeah, we'll hire you. What is your draft status?" I said, "Well, it's 2S right now." Well, the thing is, within a week, they had changed my draft status to 1A, available. I didn't get a job, couldn't get a job, until I went to the Texas Employment Commission. My wife was working in the bank in Greenville, and we had moved there, gotten us a little place. So I went to the Texas Employment Commission, and I got a job working on the road. I was a flagman. Now, I know they got now those poles, they turn around like that. I didn't have a pole with stop or slow down. I had a flag, and I stood out in front of it. You know, I probably was scared more there than I was a full tour in Vietnam. You know, little old ladies try to run you up the side of a bank. People say, "I don't care whether he's flagging or not. I'm going to go right through." So I spent my first job, and I like to tell this story because it bodes for that situation. You know what my first job was when I went to work for this company, being a flagman? Before I was a flagman, we came right back over here. I was hired like on a Thursday or Friday. My first day of work, we came right back here, and I was standing right out there in front of the hangar. We were shooting rock and hot mix on the parking lot. And I was out there shoveling that stuff, and I go, "Okay." These students walk by and said, "Get your degree. Stand right over by me, and we'll all work right here together." So I did that from about the 1st of September, and I enlisted in the service because I was going to be 1A, and I went down to see a recruiter, and he said, "Oh man, that's great, you're 1A. What you can do is, you have a degree, what you can do, we'll send you to OCS." And I said, "Oh, that'd be great. Can I go to flight school?" My dad was a pilot in World War II. I'd done some flying before I got, during my high school and college times, I'd done some flying, and I was very interested. I had a long story I'll tell somebody if somebody ever asked about. I had met a Army helicopter pilot who had made a forced landing. And once I met him and I looked at that thing, I thought, "Wow, that's awesome." And so I decided I wanted to be a helicopter pilot. And when I went to talk to the recruiter, he said, "Yeah, we'll send you OCS. You got a college degree." I said, "Fine, can I go to flight school?" And he said, "No, we're going to make you either an artillery or an infantry officer. You'll serve probably during Vietnam. And when you get back, if you're lucky, you can go." And I said, "Nah, I don't." I'd already seen pictures of infantry troops over there. That didn't look like much fun to me, because the ones over there were just like you see Marines marching around in the islands during World War II. Water up to under their chins and carrying their rifles over their heads. So I said, "Well, I want to fly." He said, "Well, you can go to the warrant officer program." So that's what I did. I became a warrant officer in the United States Air Force. United States Army. As a warrant officer, we had the same rank or the same privileges as an officer, except our whole job was to fly. We didn't command anything except an aircraft. We were pilots, and that's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a ordnance officer or a transportation officer. I wanted to fly, and I certainly didn't want to walk and carry a gun. I went to Warrant Officer School. Well, first I went to basic training, Fort Polk, Louisiana. And I will tell you about Fort Polk. We all had a saying about Fort Polk, and it's probably not good for mixed company, so if you're really interested, I'll tell you what we said about Fort Polk. From there, I went to Mineral Wells, Texas, my Phase 1 pilot training there, and I learned we had what's called a pre-flight week, or actually it was 2 or 3 weeks. We didn't fly. We went through the same OCS, same officer training as an officer candidate school did in the Army. We went through all the history and the rules, regulations of being an officer in the Army. And some of my fellow classmates didn't make it through that. Too rigid, too strong. Nobody ever got a pass. Inspections, they look at the bottom of your shoes. You know, I never got, and I didn't leave the barracks. And finally we got to fly. I flew the old OH-13s, and I'll tell you what it looks like. You know the aircraft with the big bubbles on it you see in the old movies? The big bubbles? You watch MASH?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
In MASH, that aircraft is an OH-13, Army designation. It's a H-47 civilian designation. I flew that. I was one of the last classes to fly that aircraft in training. I went from there to Fort Rucker, Alabama, and at that time, my wife finally got to go with me. We were married 2 years. I was only home 6 months. She calls those the wonder years, and I still have to get a definition, but anyway. She moved with me to Alabama. I was there for 4.5 months, I think, in Alabama, Phase 2. We finished my instrument training, transitioned to the UH-1, the Huey, and then we came home. I spent a little leave time, and I reported to Vietnam around Thanksgiving of 1969. I missed Thanksgiving that year. My orders had me leave the day before Thanksgiving. I left Thanksgiving night on the 20th. I left on the 27th, went to Washington State, caught an airplane out of there, went from Washington State to Japan, Alaska first, then to Japan, and then to Cam Ranh Bay, Vietnam. Somewhere in there, Thanksgiving Day, because of the date line and so on, I lost it. But I had a wonderful Thanksgiving before I left. I got to Vietnam into November 1969, went in at Cam Ranh Bay, an induction center for new people, 2 places. My class of 142 students out of flight school, we all went at the same time, separated into 2 groups. One group went to Saigon. They ended up flying in the lower part of the country. My group, we went to Cam Ranh, and we went up to I-2 Corps, the upper part of the country. I spent about a week in an intake center there. I came in, we flew in on a Flying Tiger airline, especially chartered by the Army, put us in there as we got there, I knew something this might not be as much as I thought, because we had to circle. There seemed like somebody was mortaring the base. We circled around out there, finally got clearance to land. I remember the pilot making a hot landing. He taxied close to the terminal. They rolled out those big stairs and opened the door and said, "Everybody off." We all jumped up and ran off, and there were these buses out there with cages over the windows, and they threw us in those buses, and off we went to a secure area. And they had no longer pulled those stairs away from that aircraft, and they left. I stayed there for about 2 weeks, a week and a half. In that time, they did all the paperwork, and they got me all squared away and made me an assignment. And that's where I got my one battle wound. We were watching a movie that night, and I heard a whomp, and I looked around, and being a new guy, I wasn't sure. I heard a second whomp, and I looked up, and the guys who'd been there a while, they took off. Well, I figured if they took off, it was time for me to take off. It was dark. I ran into a big old sticker bush, and I got a thorn in my calf that my wife pulled out about 3 years later. It was this small. From Cameron, I was assigned to the Americal Division. Americal was stationed in Chulai, Vietnam. One of the largest divisions in the Army, 27,000. We had indigenous armor. We had cav units. It was a huge outfit. We had a large AO. I went to a company, 123rd Aviation Battalion, Americal Division. My company, it ended up was a very unusual company. It had 3 platoons in it. 2 of them were more or less a regular assault platoon. I flew combat assaults in that company, in one of the platoons. Ash and trash, which means that we carried people. We had a courier route, kind of like a mail route. The 3rd platoon was a VIP unit who flew all the commanders, commander, assistant division commanders, and all the staff for the division. When I got there, I and a couple of my buddies went to A Company and B Company, which was right across the street from us. We went to where I was stationed was a little place called Keha Point, the end of Chulai. We had our own place called the Pelican's Roost because my company was named the Pelicans. Our sister company, the Warlords. I became a pilot. One of the lowest forms of life you can have is a new pilot in Vietnam. Because you would walk down the street and everybody there looked at you like, oh man, they had no idea what kind of skills you had. Flying in Vietnam was a whole lot different than flying through flight school. And they had no idea of what kind of skills you had and what kind of person you would be in a close-knit group of men. I was there for about 2 weeks. My wife wrote me a letter. My granddad had passed away. My granddad passed away on the 7th of December. And it's my granddad, and I was pretty shaken up. About a week or 2 weeks later, I was still not really. I was going down trying to get my first rides and trying to get involved in the company. And one of the few men, there was a man in the hooch where I lived, and if you want, there's some pictures over here. If you have time, I'll show you a picture of the hooch where I lived and some of these people that I talk about. And if you have time, I'll be glad to stay and talk to you and answer any questions you have after this is over with. If you don't have class or anything, be glad to talk to you. But anyway, young man named Ward Hooker, one of the first young men that actually, he'd been there about 4 months, became my friend. And he and I, he liked to smoke cigars. Gosh, he was like 19 years old. But he liked to smoke cigars and throw darts. And I credit him with my habit now of having a cigar every once in a while. Ward got up one morning and he walked by my bunk, and I was sleeping in a guy's bunk. I didn't even have a place to sleep. I was sleeping in a guy's bunk who was an R&R. And he walked by my bunk. It was a Sunday. He said, I'm going to go fly a chaplain. We always thought that was good duty, right? Fly a chaplain. He said, I'll see you this afternoon. I said, okay, Ward. I'll see you this afternoon. Ward was killed that afternoon when his aircraft hit the side of a mountain. Killed everybody on board. My first official duty in Vietnam was not flying. It was to go down and inventory Ward's personal effects. And I will tell you, by Christmas of 1969, I was pretty shaken. But I learned to adjust because those things happen. Those things happen to your friends, and the only way you make it through is you think, well, they won't happen to me. So, by the end of December, I was starting to get my flights in. I was flying with aircraft commanders. I was starting to get time in the country, learning the area, because one of your major functions was to learn where you were flying. You had maps, but we flew because we memorized where we were going, where a certain ville was, where a certain special forces. Come on in, lady. Camp may be. And I was learning all that. And I flew with that until I got enough time to become an aircraft commander. And being an aircraft commander, ladies, if you'd like to sit up here, in a room, right up here. Being an aircraft commander made you responsible for, at that time, those things cost about $350,000. Your life and the life of at least 3 other men. Your pilot, a door gunner, and a crew chief. So after a while, that was an honor, but you had to fly with seasoned veterans. You had to go out and prove yourself, become an aircraft commander. It took me a while, but I was informed that I was one of the newest aircraft commander. I had become an aircraft commander in the quickest time anybody else had been there. Now, take it for this. When I got to Vietnam, I was 22. We had the only person that I know was older than me was one of my housemates. He was 26. We called him the old man. And I don't know what they called me. So, but most of my fellow company members were just like the young man I told you about. Went to school, served a tour in Vietnam, and came back and wasn't even old enough to buy a beer. Most of the people that I served with were 19, 20 years old. So, I finally became an aircraft commander. My first job was that carrier route. Courier. Supposed to fly from point A to point B, carry people, mail, just like a FedEx driver, okay? Same thing. Mailman. Problem was is they gave me an old airplane. We were starting to get newer airplanes. So they gave me, for this run, they gave me an old airplane. She was battle worn, to say the least. She had a few patches. She didn't feel and smell real good, and she had some shakes and rattles, kind of like as we all get older, those things happen. I was doing this little run, and I got a call that I had to go back to the company area, and I participated in one of the largest combat assaults put in that year by the division. And I came back, and goodness gracious, here I am trying to fly this old airplane full of soldiers into a hot LZ, and my first day as an aircraft commander. And needless to say, I went home that night and went, oh man, this being an aircraft, this is scary stuff. I went from there. My company, as I told you, was unusual. When I made aircraft commander, my call sign was 1-5. I was in the 1st platoon, and that identified me as an aircraft commander. Our company picked up a job, and that job was to support the 5th Special Forces out of Da Nang. Picked it up in January of 1970. So I went up. We were supposed to rotate pilots. Well, I went up and to Da Nang the end of January, and I never came back down from Da Nang to serve in the company. I became there as a warrant. We had 2 aircraft, at least 4 pilots, and at least 4 crew members in Da Nang all the time. And somehow I got the duty of taking care of all the mission scheduling and that type of thing in Da Nang. And I spent 7 months with the 5th Special Forces. And that is where I got the most experience of anybody that I can think of for myself personally. Because I'd already done combat assaults And I'd already done some other things. When I got with the Special Forces group, we did some things that I didn't think I could do or actually wanted to do. During that time, I would, might surprise you, but I may have flown into a neighboring country where we weren't supposed to be. At one time I had a Special Forces group of 5 men on board, and called him an air sergeant. Sergeant that worked with us, and he said, we're going to take these gentlemen out here and drop them off. I'd done it before. I'd taken them out into the AO and dropped them off and picked them up. So he said, I want you to head west. Okay, I did. So I drove along there for a while, and I followed along on the map. The pilot's flying. I'm following right along. I know where we are. And all of a sudden, we get to the edge of my map. Well, the edge of my map was, guess what? The edge of Vietnam. And I looked around. I said, wait a minute. He looked at me. He said, you see that peak up there? That's where we're going. Well, it was way out in the middle of nowhere, and I was out there by myself, single ship, and I took them out there, dropped them on the top of that peak in some kind of harrowing landing that I had to make, got them off. We came back, and I went out and said, oh, listen, if you're going to do that, I'm not going out there by myself again. I'm going to have to do this with 2 aircraft. The next time I heard from those people, about 5 days later, called me and said, come and get us. You come get us now. So I went out to find them, and they gave me coordinates of a quote-unquote riverbed, and we stopped by and got candy bars, because every time we extracted a group, we'd buy candy bars and give them candy bars when they go on aircraft. So I called them up, and they said, we're ready to go. Come hurry quick, because if you don't get here pretty quick, we're not going to be the only ones waiting on you. So we flew in there and landed in that bed, pulled out all 5 of them, and when I looked back, he was right. That where we picked them up was swarming with people, and they didn't actually have on American uniforms. So I brought those people back, but those are the types of things that I did with the Special Forces. I worked with those people for 7 months. In May of 1970, if you'll think about it, we went into Cambodia. Well, I wasn't part of the Cambodian. It was done down by the Parrot's Beak, down further. I know you don't try to see my back. Let me back up. Down further in the in 3 Corps. In I Corps, only thing that did when they invaded Cambodia was like punching a red ant nest. We started catching them. We took over missions that all these other people were committed to. In the first part of May of 1970, there was a Special Forces camp. One of my jobs was to supply and support Special Forces camps. That's what I did. I worked for the Special Forces people. There was a camp that came under siege. It was in the bottom of a big cliff with a river running beside it, and on the other side of the river was a cliff that was about 3,000 feet tall. And it had caves in it. Well, the VC had gotten up in there, and I think some NVA, and they would put their guns in these caves, and they'd run these guns out and shoot down on the Special Forces camp. Well, it became my job to resupply and support that Special Forces camp. Well, come on in. Hi, how are you?
I'm just stopping by for a minute.
All right, thank you. And it became my job to support that camp. So every day, once or twice, for several weeks, my crew, I didn't assign it to anybody else, I took the job myself. And we would go into that thing once or twice every day and support that camp. It was such, we couldn't land on the prepared landing area because that thing was already zeroed in. We figured maybe 20, 30 seconds on the ground before the first rounds ever hit. We would fly into an area. There were 2 places that we finally decided we could land. One of them was, both of them were concreted. One of them was an ammo storage. And right now I'm thinking, that's not very smart, thinking about landing on top of an ammo, concrete or not. And the other one was the TOC and hospital, Tactical Operations Center, and the hospital. Both of them had concrete tops on them, about as big, just big enough to put the skids of a UH-1 on. And we would land to one of those. We'd come in every day on a different route, different altitude, different direction, would land on top of one of those two. I would carry in everything from caskets to ammo, food, resupply. I'd carry out wounded, people who were actually had, their service was up and they were trying to get out of country. I did that for over 2 weeks that I can think of. It was longer than that, but every day. And every day we'd go back and we'd go back out. And every day they tried to shoot us going in and tried to shoot us going out. And all my trips in and out, we didn't get a scratch. I never picked up a round, a piece of shrapnel. Now we got a lot of dirt on the aircraft when a rocket went off and blew a big hole in the ground, blew dirt everywhere, and scared me and everybody else to death. But we never got a scratch. But for that operation, I was awarded a Bronze Star. I don't know about my other crew, but because my participation, I was awarded the Bronze Star. Put in for the Bronze Star by the Special Forces. Later on that month, as things continued to heat up, my company alone in that month lost 9 aircraft. 1 full crew, part of another crew, and 2 of those aircraft were mine. Later on, toward the end of October, we got a call that there was a Special Forces unit, advisors, 4 advisors and about 50 rough puffs. 50, they're like, I don't want to call them mercenaries, but they were Montagnards fighting under the direction of Special Forces troops, both American and Vietnamese Special Forces troops. I got a call that there were some wounded and they were in a firefight. So, and they needed a medical evacuation. The medical aircraft wouldn't go in, the ones with big red crosses. One of the reasons is that big red cross, it became just an excellent target. You marked that thing with a big red cross, it was something to aim at. And they weren't armed. And I don't blame them. Those men did a lot of things and they made a lot of combat rescues under tremendous fire. And a lot of pilots died trying to do exactly that. But in this case, I was the one they called. And I carried the aircraft I flew was a Huey called a Slick. It carried our armament, was whatever we had with us. I had a 38 pistol, Smith & Wesson, looked like John Wayne. And I'm going, if I ever have to use this thing, we're in bad shape. Both pilots carried that. Now, we did manage to get some sidearms. The other pilot had managed to scrounge up a 12-gauge shotgun, U.S. government-issued shotgun, and he carried ammo with that. I was given an M1 carbine by one of the Special Forces troops, and I carried that. Our gunners carried M16s, and our ship was armed with 2 M60 machine guns, and that's what we had as armor. Personally, you can see some pictures. For us, we wore a chicken plate. It was a Kevlar plate about this thick, had a front and a back. We didn't wear the back, but it fit right up under your chin, fit right down here and right across here. We had armored seats. Again, I've got pictures of armored seats with a sliding armor piece that sit about right here. Your legs were exposed from about there down, and of course the top of your head. And we always took that pistol and pulled it around right here in front. You can guess what that may be for, whether that was going to help any or not, I don't know. But we pulled that pistol around and put it right there. And then we'd scrunch real low into that seat. So we went out to this place, and I called up a gun company. You've seen I know you've all seen the parts where, if you watched We Were Soldiers Once and Young, you've seen those gunships, Charlie Mama gunships. They carried weapons, rockets. Those, I called up the Bearcats, the Black Cats out of Da Nang, 282nd, I think, and I got 2 gunships to go with me out there because it was a hot extraction. Well, we went out to the valley. called Elephant Valley. When I got out there, I could see what was going on. There was a tree line up here, the bad guys were up here, and down here was a gully, and the good guys were in this gully. Bad part about it is the bad guys had a big weapon, a 30 caliber machine gun, and they were just raking that place. You could tell by the tracers what it was. They were just shooting up everybody. Well, we called in, told them where we were, got a location for the friendlies. I set the gunships up to work over the tree line, and then I'd try to go in and pick these guys up because they were needed. They've got severely wounded. Well, the gunships worked on the tree line, and that 30 cal, as everybody started to move, that 30 cal, you could see him. He moved his tracers around from working over the gully. He shot at me a little bit, and thank goodness, about the time he started shooting at me, the gunships showed up, and he concentrated on them. The fact is, he shot them up pretty bad, but they stayed with me as long as they could. While all that was going on, I finally managed to land the aircraft and in a position close to the gully where we could have dragged the wounded out and get the wounded out. I turned the tail toward the bad guys and opened up and told my gunners clear to shoot. And they shot, and chaos and racket and banging and booming and black smoke all in the cockpit and just all kinds of racket. But we're sitting on the ground, and we couldn't have been there too long. It seemed like, an hour to me. And all the time, it's like, have you seen the cowboy movies where the dirt's kicked up because the shells kicked up in front of John Wayne's running across there and shells kicked up the grass and around him. Same thing around us. I looked out the chin bubble and out the front of the aircraft, and dirt's kicking up in front of that thing. Oh, it's like a cowboy movie, except those things were real. And I looked out the side window, and as they started to bring the wounded across, I can still see one of the young men had a head wound, and I can still see they had him bandaged up, but he had blood running all down the front of him. A young Special Forces troop. Another one was wounded. It must have been a leg wound or something, because they had to carry and drag him. And all the time they're doing this, people are shooting at him. It's amazing to me that they're out there trying to evacuate these people, and people are shooting at them. We finally got all the wounded aboard and evacuated the area, left the area, and flew these people to and on the way back, they asked us if we would come back and pick up 2 more wounded. And I was willing to do so. I'd already asked the crew, and they said, yeah, and these guys, we could take care of and stabilize those guys, because we were the only aircraft around. But as we started to turn, we were notified that another aircraft, that the VC had broken contact, and another aircraft was coming to pick up the wounded. Got back to the hospital, dropped off the wounded, went over to a maintenance area and parked the aircraft and started counting holes. And you don't really realize, I will tell you that while you do these things, you act on adrenaline, training, and your job. My job as a pilot was to take care of the people I was assigned to take care of. I spent a whole tour. I never fired a shot in anger. I didn't even pull my pistol. I never fired a shot in anger. My job was to take care of people, and that's exactly what we did. And I will tell you, on the way back from that landing situation, my knees started shaking. I ran out of adrenaline, and I guess I ran out of brave about the same time. And my knees started shaking, and I had a pilot on board, and I looked at him, and he didn't know what was going on anyway. That's about his third, fourth. He had no idea what was going on. He was so scared, his eyes were about this big around. He was so scared, he didn't know to be scared. I let him fly, get my knees quit shaking, and my stomach quit turning over. We landed, let everybody off, and I started counting holes. And I feel like a very lucky man. Large caliber weapons blew out the skid cap on one of the skids. We had holes in the rotor blade, battery compartment, tail boom. One of them went under my seat. I left the aircraft there, told them I wanted another one. And the maintenance officer brought up another aircraft, and he flew that, and I wasn't going to fly anymore because I didn't know how much, it's going to leak oil all over everybody. But they brought me another aircraft, and unbeknownst to me, when I left country, I was nominated by that Special Forces group, first of all for the Silver Star, but because it was aircraft, and I'm more proud of this anyway, I was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for that operation. I spent the rest of my time working for those people, working for the Special Forces. I worked up until August of 1970. And I have some other stories, there's some other things that people that I did that I look back now and say, man, I must have been crazy. You know what? When you're 22 years old, I was invincible. Man, I could do anything. Now, by the end of that tour, I was pretty sure I couldn't do everything I thought I could do.